Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are entering here for the first time, my name is Megan and I am a goth Mormon. Today I'm going to talk about my career as a pastry sous chef, how I got there, while at the same time decorating a cake with you. I actually got this request off of Instagram. I did a Q&A for my followers to see what they might like to see more of, and I got two suggestions. One was talking about my career, and then two was just decorating in front of them. So luckily for you guys, today is the best of both worlds, and I am doing both. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I went ahead and I already sliced the cake into even sections because that's a special process on its own, and that will be for another video. Okay, I do obviously have some frosting on here, but I thought you guys would really appreciate this because what would be a goth kitchen without some awesome tools? Am I right? So when it comes to building a cake, what I personally like to do and what a lot of professional chefs do is we use something called a simple syrup. You can make one very simply just by adding some hot water and then getting a little bit of sugar. I usually like to do a 1-on-1 ratio, which means, 50-50. And I put a couple ice cubes in there. And in this case, I am doing a limoncello cake. I cannot afford to buy limoncello. I actually don't really keep alcohol in my house just because I don't drink and also because it's expensive. So I just keep the basics. So what I ended up doing today, I just kind of made my own and I saved like 40 bucks. Kind of spread it evenly with your pastry brush. In this case, I actually have a hardware brush because they're a lot cheaper than pastry brushes, and if I need to get a new one, it's gonna cost me like $2 rather than like 20. I'm going to let that set for just a moment, see deep into the cake, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a touch. And if I see some of the simple syrup kind of rising forth, like a sponge, if you will, when it's wet, then I know that I have enough. However, if nothing is coming up, I need to add a little bit more. Now I'm going to be doing something called a French border. When it comes to doing a French border, I already have this prepared. Basically just kind of line it along the border of the cake, and then you put your actual filling on the inside. This actually helps keep it really clean, and it makes it a lot easier to pre-portion your ingredients. And now I have my blueberry filling, and I can just go ahead and pipe that in right now. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just need to make sure I have enough for the inside. I'm going to be grabbing a very small offset spatula. This is what they look like. They're extremely useful for small tasks. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my finger right here because this kind of gives balance to the tool. And I'm just going to quickly just kind of smear that around on the inside, keeping it within that cute little border that I made. See, we're already done. That didn't take very long at all. And I actually already have the second layer prepared right here. What I'm going to do is find the part that is a little bit higher and match that with the part that I cut that's a little bit lower. All right, so I found my spot. I'm going to go ahead and flip this over and just kind of plop that right there for a moment. I'm actually sitting on a stool right now because I'm a very short person and it may be difficult to see me on camera, but I will be pushing this way a little bit because the cake is going to end up being about this high. The second layer is on. So what we're going to do is the same process as last time. We're going to get some simple syrup, douse that a little bit, make sure the cake is nice and moisturized. And then we're going to be doing our French border as well as our filling. Again, had to move the cake a little bit because as the cake gets taller, I realize you're not really going to be able to see me, which could be a little bit of a problem. Unless you don't want to see me, I guess just cover your eyes. So when it comes to my career, I actually wanted to be a deep sea marine biologist my entire life, and I still do. But unfortunately, as I was leaving the college of my dreams for an introductory period, I was told that I was never going to succeed in that career because I'm not very good at math. It absolutely broke my heart. I had to decide something quick because I graduated high school just about a month later. Now this may awaken a core memory, my dear millennials, but do any of you remember the Art Institute? I sure do. You know, they roped me in. I am a very artsy person. As many of you may know, every single school shut down. Yeah, I decided to go ahead and go along with the science of baking and pastry. I wasn't really allowed to go to the college of my dreams after all. I was told that I wasn't ready to be an adult. So it was a hard time for me. Nonetheless, when I took the tour of the Art Institute, I was fascinated with the baking and pastry rooms. I initially wanted to go in for graphic design, but I am terrible at technology. I'm a one-man show doing this today, and I really hope that it turns out right. But anyway, I was absolutely fascinated with the 25 plus KitchenAid mixers I saw in that room that day, and that's kind of what got me started. I did an accelerated program with the Art Institute, and I actually graduated in barely over a year and a quarter. That was a lot of school, and I had a full-time job. Holy heck, that was awful. Had the rest of the cakes back there. Gotta have storage somehow, don't I? As time progressed, I did very well in school. It was completely different than high school because it was something that I, kind of wanted to do. After school, I still had my job at a retail store working as a baker's clerk. I later got promoted to customer service. I loved my job. However, there was also part of the reason why I transferred over and got that promotion. That lousy manager actually told me that she thought I would never amount to anything in baking and pastry. She actually called me a loser. Nonetheless, I loved that job that I had in retail for a very long time. However, I really wanted to get started and advance my career, get my foot through the door. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, it is very hard to get your foot in the door when you start off in culinary because they don't really tell you that your dreams might get crushed at first. And what I mean by that is, there are some people that think that they know everything when they graduate and, I'm gonna open my own restaurant right now and do this and this and this. Well, no, that's not exactly how that works. In this industry, as well as many others, you need to practice. And it's an industry where you never ever stop learning. And if those people have that mindset where they feel like they have learned everything and they know everything, that's a problem. I actually was very lucky at the start of my career. I'm sorry guys, I had a little bit of a mishap with my camera. I'm very sorry about that. So I am most grateful for the two chefs that I worked under there. One being the executive chef, his name was Michael. He must have seen something in me because he was the reason why I drove all the way across the country to accept this position. And it really helped carry me far for the start of my career. And the second was my supervisor, Jeremy, who really just took me under his wing. He was also a young chef himself. I think only 28 at the time when I met him, so he was very, very young. He just taught me so many amazing things, and he taught me that as long as you're professional about it, you can have fun in a kitchen, which has stuck to me to this day. I need to move this over again real quick. I'm at the part now where I trim the border a little bit. It helps keep it more clean and organized and a lot easier for me to do the frosting on top. As you can see, even though it's pretty straight, I'm actually looking at the cake through the camera, so I'm sorry I'm not focusing on you guys. So just trimming that a little bit very carefully will help create that goal that I want. So I personally do not like to do the simple syrup on top until I trim the border because I really don't like sticky. I'm doing this as gently and as slowly as I possibly can. I can technically fix things if it's a very small error. I can make a paste out of some cake and frosting. If you choose to do something like this, I highly recommend a really sharp bread knife. Yeah, that's a lot better. Last layer of simple syrup, we're going to do something called a crumb coat. I like to start in between the cracks of the cake, just kind of fill in any gaps that I had with my French border. It looks like a little bumblebee. When it comes to refilling your bag or just filling a bag in general, you really don't want to fill it more than halfway because that can put a lot of strain and pressure on your wrist. So you see all this right here? I actually have a little trick for that. You grab a bench knife or a bowl scraper And I know you can't see it, and I'm sorry guys. Push it down along the bag towards the bottom. That way when you refill, you don't risk getting your hands dirty. Go ahead and twist that. Release the excess air. When it comes to doing the crumb coat on a cake, you really don't want that much frosting at all. The goal of this is to just cover the crumbs of the cake. You don't have to worry about crumbs coming through later. And now I have my big offset spatula. This one is my grandmother's, who is no longer with us, but I do have a lot of her old pastry decorating tools, and this is one of them. If it doesn't cover everything, that is perfectly fine. It's just a crumb coat. I want to seal all these crumbs in their little tomb forever. I tend to just do one slow stroke all the way around to start. I just kind of want to use whatever frosting I have on here. If it turns out I need a little bit more, that's perfectly fine. But with a crumb coat, you really just want to cover the basics. You don't want to waste all of your frosting on this coat. It's not meant to look pretty. Scraping the bottom real quick so it doesn't leave a foot. A foot just makes it really difficult when you're trying to do the second layer. And if you're wondering why this may look similar to some other cakes you might have seen, is because this is something known as a naked cake. They were really popular between 2016 and 2019. When it comes to this stuff, we definitely want to get rid of these little ruffles on top. About a 45-degree angle, work from the outside and kind of go upward as I go and push to the center very lightly, just like that. And we get rid of the excess because, again, there are crumbs in here. We don't want to reuse it, which is also why, like I said, you want to use as minimal frosting as possible because this can make a lot of waste. All right, so it's looking like it's pretty even. First step is done. I'm going to pop this in my freezer for a couple minutes to get this nice and hard so I can work on the second layer. So while I'm waiting for that to finish, I'm actually going to finish off making my chicken pot pie for dinner because the base is right over there. I get chicken pot pie and we're back. I feel so stupid right now. I forgot to turn on my ring light. We're going to work on our actual coat of frosting. Same process. I like to work with a pastry bag. I feel like it's just a lot easier and more consistent. I like to start at the very bottom. Same process. I just give it a squeeze. There was an air bubble there. Whoops. Just working. Since all the crumbs are already sealed in, with the extra frosting, I can scrape it off, put it back in the bowl, and then use it again to cover up any patches that I might need to patch. And just gently go around, spinning all around. Yeah, that was a song I made up. It was terrible. And again, I can patch up anything that I might need to patch. I'd rather have just enough than too much because there's nothing worse than too much frosting. Let me know how you guys feel about that. Take a vote down below. Are you more of a cake person or more of a frosting person? Continuing on with my career path, I was at Renaissance Orlando at SeaWorld for almost 3 years. I really loved it there, and honestly, I was really sad to leave, but I made the decision to leave because I really wanted to seek more opportunities. After I left Renaissance, I ended up working for a very large company. You might know them as the mouse at the Disney Worlds. Yes, I was a cast member for a time being. The first time I worked there, I really enjoyed my location. However, it was exactly what I did not want. Even though I had really impressed the team with my skills and knowledge that I had learned thus far, I was placed in quick service. There is absolutely nothing wrong with quick service. I do have many friends that are cast members that are in quick service. However, for baking and pastry, it's a little bit different. I was put down as an advanced cook. Honestly, it really wasn't that at all. I was, decorating cupcakes. We just kind of did a little poop swirl on top. There was a lot of stuff that we didn't even really bake. It was already prepared from other locations. We weren't exactly in a full service bakery. I did briefly transfer to Amaret's Patisserie over in Disney Springs. I loved that job, I really did. However, unfortunately, I had a very hard time in my life during that time. The chef that I worked for took a liking to me and she understood what I was going through, so she actually sent me back to my first location, which I didn't actually mention the first time. It was at a place called Kringla, and that was in Norway at Epcot. I was with the company for almost 2 years when I decided to formally resign. I had a lot of amazing bosses and I had a lot of amazing people that I am still friends with today. Shout out to you too, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Unfortunately, was under a horrible supervisor that really wasn't nice to me, and she made it her life's mission to honestly get me terminated. So I decided to do the wiser thing and formally resigned. I was helping out at a restaurant with a friend I know very well and love. I'm actually making her birthday cake. I worked at that restaurant for about 6 months. It was okay. I was actually a line cook. I did not do bacon and pastry at that time. It was a whole new world for me. I had helped out on the line lots of times, but I was never full-blown line cook doing everything. So that was rough. It was really rough. I had another opportunity with a very good friend slash professional chef, executive chef actually, that I still speak to and occasionally work with today. I had the opportunity to work for Wyndham, and it was a new location that was being developed. My chef, his name was Robert. He gathered some of the, what he said, most talented crew he knew, and we were actually going to make a restaurant ourselves. I had slowly been working my way up the food chain. I also had become a chef assistant. Robert saw my potential and he saw what I was able to do. In fact, he was so impressed that he said something I'll never forget. He said that I was actually really helpful on the line when I did help out, because the attention to detail, he said, was something that only a truly skilled pastry chef would be able to master. So when it came to like our competitions and for doing the garnishes on the plates, I was actually in charge of that, and I helped execute some of the designs of the dishes, which really, really meant a lot to me. I enjoyed working for Robert so much that I really, really put my true heart and soul into everything in that restaurant that we were building. It was actually through him where I earned my very first well-earned title of pastry chef. A huge, huge accomplishment. It was such an honor. It was even on my name tag, which still makes me want to cry today. I have done all kinds of wedding expos, banquet events, tournaments, and competitions. One of which was the World Food Championship 50 in the pastry department. I placed 9th. This was back when I was very, very young. I was only about 20 years old. And you can actually find it on YouTube. If I can find it, I'll link it in the description box. Because it's hilarious. You hear me screaming at people because they were in the way and I only had a few seconds left to like turn it in on time. I wasn't very nice, but it's the funniest thing. I hope I can find it. Unfortunately, working for Robert wouldn't last through no fault of his own. And what had happened was our location was getting taken over by new people. Management was not happy with the delays with everything, which was no fault of our own, but because things took so long and we were already really behind on development and X, Y, and Z, everyone on site ended up losing their job that day. It was a pretty dark time of my life. I was unemployed for almost 4 months. I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna do it again. I already have good standing with this company. So I went back to the Disney Worlds. I started there as a pastry chef assistant, so I did take a few steps down, but Disney really doesn't hire people starting as a sous chef or executive chef. You really gotta earn that right. So I didn't mind going back to chef assistant. I worked over at the Contemporary, and it was a great kitchen. We made everything for every restaurant and department in the hotel. So it was a massive pastry kitchen with all different kinds of positions and opportunities for work. I thought things were going pretty great, but then COVID happened. March 10th, 2020 was the day that I lost my job at Disney, as well as thousands of other cast members. It was a really hard time, not just for me, but for everybody on the planet. I really feel like it impacted everybody in not just one, but sometimes several significant ways. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I could not find work. Many of us could not find work. I live alone, so the whole quarantine thing, even though it was great to start because I'm an introvert, when I got to about day 87 of not seeing a single face, it really, really messed with me. I didn't know where I was gonna go from there with my career, and it was terrifying. I think my pot pie may be done. Fast forward to February of 2021, I landed a job at an assisted living facility. I have such a soft spot for the elderly. I love hearing their stories and talking with them. I was the sous chef there. I thought it was a really good job at first. I'm just not gonna mention the place so I can actually talk about it. Unfortunately, with many assisted living facilities, a lot of abuse happens to the residents there. A lot of people assume and think that because people are elderly, that they can't speak for themselves. Some of the cruelest things I've ever seen definitely took place here. There was also a big problem with sanitation there. Our executive chef did not care when it came to cleanliness of our facilities. I remember this one time, oh, it was great. It was like karma served hard. We had the health inspector come. Oh, yes, we did. We absolutely did. I called the executive chef that day and I'm like, hey, just so you know, health inspector's here. He panics. Oh my gosh, he panics. He panicked so hard because he was already never there. Now, because we had the health department here to make sure that everything was within code, I had never seen him freak out so much in my life. Needless to say, we failed that day. I feel bad for saying it, but I do need to be honest. I specifically chose not to really do anything that day when it came to making sure things were in code. I knew that things were not going to get fixed in 10 minutes. There's no such thing as a perfect kitchen, but by golly, you really want to make sure that you try your best. But I did make sure that I did everything on my part. I always had my sanding bucket, which is short for sanitation bucket, which they never used. Again, I'm not naming this facility for a reason. The executive chef came back like the next day and he's like, we need to fix things. And I'm like, all right, well, what do you want us to do? And he goes, I don't know, you figure it out. I don't know what needs to be done. Yeah. Okay, my pot pie was done and I was really hungry, but that gave me plenty of time to make sure that this was frozen solid to begin the decorating process. That was my favorite part of the entire process of making cakes. Back to the assisted living facility, it just got worse and worse. He was never around, the executive chef, ever. All of the responsibility was solely on me, which is fine. However, the kitchen's not supposed to be entirely operated by a sous chef. It was just a big problem. The coworkers, they were nice people, but they just kind of worked here as a job. None of them had ever served before, worked in hospitality. None of them have ever cooked before. So it was a real challenge to understand why it was so important to have food and safety sanitation and why it's so important to prevent foodborne illness. Eventually, the executive chef kind of was on to me because I was really taking over and I had goals to get this kitchen turned around. He didn't like it because he felt threatened. I know I shouldn't ever do in my career, but in this case, I do not regret it at all, apart from one thing. It was either March or April. It was whenever Passover was this year. I wanted to do a Seder for the residents. We had a lot of Jewish residents. I made sure everything was done. He didn't care whether or not things were Passover kosher, which is a big deal in the Jewish religion. You cannot do something like that. And his excuse was, well, we'll never know. I hope he's doing miserable right now. I just absolutely had it. He left at like 4 p.m., leaving myself and the other sous chef completely alone. It was just the two of us. We had so many people pop up for dinner all at the same time. We had, I want to say, up to 75 tickets at a time. We were drowning and the servers were calling me names. Name calling is never okay. I made the decision to clean up all of my stuff after service was done that night, and I walked out. I didn't even say anything when they called me the next couple of weeks, like wondering where I was. I left nothing, and I do not regret it to this day, apart from, again, that one thing, which was saying goodbye to my beloved residents, because I feel like I let them down. Sorry. I feel like I let them down, and I hope that they're doing okay. I hope that things are better at that place. But anyway, what I have right here is a lot of cocoa butter, a little bit of white chocolate, and some specialized coloring in it that's specifically only for chocolate. I'm actually going to put it a little bit along the top of the cake. I don't exactly know what I have planned yet. I have a bunch of stuff back here that you can't see. Ooh, I spilled. I think that looks pretty decent. You know, I just wanted a little bit, and that's exactly what I got. July of 2021 came, and I landed a job at the Orlando World Center, which is the largest Marriott property in the world, and it's also the largest hotel in Orlando. Unfortunately, I was hired under false promises. But, you know, forgive and forget. You know, I really learned a lot there. It was great. It was wonderful. HR there is a mess. It kind of started rocky on the get-go. My grandmother had passed away a week before I was supposed to officially start. She died very suddenly and tragically. She coded while she was on dialysis, and unfortunately in the ambulance she didn't make it. Which, this is a side note, my grandmother was the most amazing person. She loved animals. She loved making friends. She was such a gentle soul, and I am so blessed and honored that she taught me some of these things that I carry throughout my life today, such as, you know, how to love animals fully and how to crochet. She taught me how to do that too, and she also was an incredibly skilled baker. She made rolls for her students at the cafeteria. She was a cafeteria lady for, gosh, well over 30 years. And she would make these rolls by hand, and the kids knew her. They knew her by name. They loved her. They loved her food. I'm very grateful that her talents got passed on to me. Gosh, I'm emotional in this video. I'm so sorry, guys. Things did get a little better there until suddenly it wasn't. Unfortunately, I was the victim of a certain kind of harassment that starts with an S. Allegedly, I was not telling the truth. There was a guy that worked there that started off pretty nice, but then things just got worse. I'm going to leave all the details out because it's really traumatizing for me. It got so bad that I went to my executive chef, and he went to HR, as he should. HR did not believe me. I started to have a lot of paranoia. I couldn't even function properly, and I knew I wasn't doing my job well, which isn't fair to my coworkers. One day I finally lost it, and I had a really bad mental breakdown. Around the same time, this was 7 months later, my grandfather passed just 7 months after my grandmother had. You know what they say, when you love someone that much, you really can die of a broken heart. And that's exactly what happened to my grandfather. Things were just not looking good for me. Things just weren't working out. I requested a leave of absence, and I was denied. I was told that I can take up to 3 days, which wasn't nearly enough time. I didn't know whether or not my grandfather was going to live. And I also didn't know what the heck was gonna happen to me. They claimed that they were doing an investigation, but honestly, I don't think they ever were. I had to formally resign because they gave me an ultimatum. It was either come back to work starting immediately, or I would be fired. It could have been a great place, it really could have, but unfortunately, it just wasn't it. I forgive everybody. I even forgive that guy. So where exactly did I go from there? For a few months, I briefly worked for a company. I got to travel to so many places that I honestly never probably would have visited. That was just a huge opportunity, and I loved every minute of it. Unfortunately, that also did not last long because my friend that I had at the time, no longer my friend, totally duped me. I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do because it seems like I just have a lot of bad luck. Wouldn't you agree? I ended up just going back to my roots, and I currently am a nanny as well as a personal chef. My roots go back to babysitting. I was actually really good at it. I decided to just take a break from hospitality, which has been a year and a half now. I'm loving my job. I love my kids. I have an incredible family that I work for, and I'm really grateful. I will go back to hospitality when I am ready. My happiness was worth way more than any kind of job. I'm not going to sacrifice my time and my happiness. In the industry, we don't get weekends. We don't get to spend time with friends because there's opposite schedules. I hadn't had a Christmas in 9 years at that time. Gosh, I've realized how damaged my body has become. I feel like an old woman all the time now. It's terrible. That is a very summed up part about how my career got started and where I am now. It probably wasn't what people were expecting. Now I probably am just gonna finish decorating this cake with you guys. I'm sorry that I went rambling for a little bit. I'm a person that sometimes goes on tangents. Now the cake is thawing a little bit. I know you can't see it, but I'm gently using my brush and just kind of dabbing. See, this is what I ended up finishing. I'm not doing anything right here because honestly, this is gonna be the back of the cake. I don't really like how that looks because of this right here. Which is fine, there's always a back to a cake. I have this adorable flamingo that's gonna be on the top of this thing. It's kind of an inside joke. Like I said, a whole bunch of stuff back there that you can't see because my big old body is blocking it, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. This is a neat little trick when you kind of want to do a pop of color, but not color the entire batch that you have. I'm gonna do like little ribbons, if you will. This is by Chef Rubber. I'm squirting this down along the seams of my bag. So it's just gonna travel down. As you can see, it's gonna go all the way down, and I need to pay attention because I'm worried this thing might leak some stuff out. Why? Decided I'm going to do like a bit of a border first. I also decided that I'm going to partially color the rest of my buttercream, so it's just kind of like marbled right now. So as you can see, it definitely did streak down, and because I pressed so firmly, it made kind of like an expansion looking thing, which is exactly what I wanted. Oh yeah, that looks great. I don't know if you can see it on the camera as well as I can because again, I'm filming from my phone. I think I'm gonna do another really big one right here. I'm just having fun with it. I'm not focusing too much on what's going to happen. I'm gonna let you guys look from the front a little bit. Now, I'm just going to say this because I have a friend that is probably watching right now. I just wanted to let him know that this cake is yellow. It is not blue. I know you guys are not gonna understand that. I don't expect you to, and I'm not going to tell you. I just wanna make sure everybody feels included on this channel. Aren't these cute? I actually got them off of Amazon for $5.99. I can do this kind of thing with chocolate. However, it's actually a little warm in my apartment right now, so I wouldn't be able to temper chocolate for a video when the mood takes me, which it certainly doesn't right now. Sorry. Some massive strawberries, and I decided to add these to the top of the cake as well. Having fresh fruit always just looks so elegant on a cake. That's looking pretty good. I've also got some fresh blueberries because the cake does have blueberry filling with blueberry jam. Right here is where we're at now. There is a lot of negative space right here, which is where I'm going to be putting the flamingo. Another really good tip that comes to decorating a cake with fresh fruit, as well as tart, when you just put them on as is, it makes them look so dry. Actually taking a little bit of that simple syrup that I had saved, gently dancing the brush around the fresh fruit to just really make it look shiny and more enticing. I hope you're able to see on camera the difference that made, having a simple syrup on top of the berries. Again, I'm mostly focusing on what the cake looks like, so I'm sorry that I'm not looking into the camera this time. I have some gold dust right here. I mixed that with clear alcohol because it's going to dry completely, but the gold will remain. It's a really nice accent to do on cakes. I actually prefer silver, but I ran out. I actually do feel like the gold will look better. Yes, I'm even painting some of the leaves on the strawberries because it's really all about that attention to detail that you want to focus on for the finishing touches. All right, so this is what we've got right now. I am almost done with this thing. I'm gonna scoot it up real quick. Hopefully you can see some of that detail in the gold. If not, I am so sorry, guys. Before adding the topper, the last thing I'm going to add is a little bit of the Chef Rubber Disco Glitter. This is an edible glitter. Please, 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 guys, do not use craft glitter on anything that you're going to be eating. Reason being is because not only can it be an irritant on the skin, but there are also chemicals in that glitter that can cause cancer. It is specifically made for crafts. This is made for eating. I'm gonna do it the naughty way, also the messy way, but I'm just going to just kind of bedazzle the border of the cake. Just like this. A little goes such a long way with this stuff, guys. Do not overdo it. Decorate the entire top of the cake. You're not going to be able to see it in this video. However, I will end the video with a finished product of the cake. And now I've got that classic art herpes all over my hand. I should have used gloves, but here we are. And last but certainly not least is the cute little cake topper. I already know where I want to put it, so I'm just gonna kind of stick it right there. And I'm done. This is the finished product. I hope you guys really like it. I actually did decide to remove that fork anyway. I thought it looked kind of dumb at the end. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. I know this was a longer one, but those that stuck through it the whole time, I really appreciate you. If this is something that you might be interested in the future, please do consider giving a like and subscribe down below. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Hugs and hisses.